to Nuked Radio. This is episode 52. Today is Thursday, July 26th, 2012. I am your host, Christina Consola. With me today is Jules.
Good afternoon, Christina. How are you today?
Tired. How are you?
Tired. Since we stayed up watching for the Dorico storm last night.
Yeah, Jules and I got hit last night with this crazy line of storms that moved through Michigan and then on to New York. The Rads spiked ahead of it 4 times over background in my area. Of course, it could have been a different story right down the block from us. Who knows? Dr. Deagle had indicated on the show that I did with him on Monday that when your Geiger goes over 3 times background, you need to put on your mask. So today, there's more rain in the forecast for the Midwest and the New England area and some of the mid-Atlantic states. I haven't looked at the IntelliCast radar this morning, but I will be doing a forecast later to address that. We have lots of news to go over. Well, not all of it is Fukushima related. What I wanted to talk about right away is what's going on in Southern California. There was a strange smell reported 2 days ago. I'm going to read the original article and then the update that came out today. Residents in Ensenada, Del Mar, Carmel Valley, Solana Beach report a strange gas-like smell. Mysterious odor was reported along the North County coast on Tuesday. This is from the San Diego News 10. Lifeguards were first to report the strong odor at about 5 p.m. The odor was described as a gas-like smell rolling in off the ocean. Soon after, 10 News was flooded with calls. Residents from the coast all the way to Rancho Bernardo and 4S Ranch reported experiencing the smell. Some complained of headaches and outdoor activities were canceled. One Del Mar resident who did not want to be identified was inside the library at Cardiff on about 5 p.m. when the gas-like odor filled the entire building with the doors closed. There was nothing when I walked in that door, and within 10 minutes the entire library was filled, she said. Eventually she got in her car and drove to try to get away from the smell. At about 5:30, the woman parked at San Diego County Park and took a photo of what she believes is some kind of aerosol compound, she says, fell from the sky and coated her car windows. I tried to wipe it and it was black and sticky and tried to put my window down and it smeared, she said. She's convinced that it was gas that was dispersing, something with an oil component. She feels what occurred Tuesday was no accident and wants the people responsible to answer up. It's just not acceptable to say we don't know, nobody knows, which we've heard over the years time and time again when these things happen. And if you do a Google search for strange smell in California, it does happen with some frequency. There were probably 3 or 4 stories that I saw right away just in the past year. The source of the odor remains unclear. San Diego Gas and Electric is investigating and has reported no problems. Fire departments in the North County have also not found any leaks. Late Tuesday, 10 News received a statement from the city of Solana Beach that read, "Please do not be alarmed. The apparent smell of gas reported from Oceanside to La Jolla is not a leak of gas. The smell is caused by natural occurring conditions from the ocean." So today, there was a follow-up to this. Some university students at Scripps discovered the site of a methane seepage 20 miles west of Del Mar about 2 weeks ago when they were diving. Again, this is reported in San Diego News 10. The strange smell 10 News viewers reported Tuesday is now being reviewed by the San Diego Air Pollution Control District. Meanwhile, Scripps Institution of Oceanography graduate students made an interesting discovery about 2 weeks ago during a research expedition that could offer a possible explanation. Deep under the ocean, methane gas is known to sometimes seep along continents. Using a specially equipped research vessel, 5 Scripps grad students set out to find seepage off the coast. After heading 20 miles west of Del Mar and using echo sounding, they noticed a distinct mound on the sea floor about 3,400 feet down. The students found a deep-sea site where gas appears to be leaking from the sea floor. They are calling it a significant discovery, especially because it is so convenient to access for researchers to conduct further study. The students brought up carbonite, a rock that gives off carbon dioxide, as well as certain tube worms and clams that only exist around methane and hydrogen sulfide. Could the methane, which is 20 miles out and more than a half mile down and normally odorless, be the cause of the mysterious smell? What we might smell is hydrogen sulfide, which smells like rotten eggs, and that is associated with methane seeps. but the methane itself doesn't smell like anything. However, they said they did not smell the sulfide until they cut into some of the mud samples. Fellow researcher Gillian Maloney also doubts the methane is the smell source. I think it's highly unlikely that it would reach shore even if it was emitting an odor, which I don't think it is. It's not clear if the methane seeps constantly or in bursts, but it's sitting right over an active fault line. It's not really well understood how faults, when they move, if they release more gas, said Maloney. For now, there are no real conclusions. Researchers will head out again in December to learn more. Until then, they said there's no need to worry about the methane seep. I don't think it poses any hazard, said Maloney. It's a really neat environment, and we're excited to find out more about it. Geologist Pat Abbott said tiny underwater earthquakes could also cause extra methane to burst out. He also said it's unlikely that the methane is the cause of the smell, but does not rule it out completely. So it's occurring right over a fault line, but there's nothing to worry about. Let's look at the earthquake map. We had a 4.3 off the coast of Oregon yesterday. There was a 5.2 in Northern Cali a few days ago, and lots of little earthquakes, but you know that happens there quite a bit. Have your bug out bags ready. You should already if you live in California.
Yeah, you know, Christina, there was an article that came out in Extinction Protocol this morning that was talking about how, they've been prepping for a while on the San Andreas Fault, and they were predicting something around a 7.8, and now they're saying that estimate is a bit too low. They're predicting that the big one, quote unquote, would be somewhere around an 8.6.
Off the coast?
Or
just
no,
San Andreas?
Southern Cali, yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty devastating.
That would be really devastating.
There were also a couple of small earthquakes around Yellowstone yesterday. 2.5 in Montana, 2.7 in Nevada, 3.0, and a 2.8 the day before, right around the caldera. So keep an eye on your earthquake links if you live in those areas. In other nuclear-related news, the feds offer a pittance to 5 states for debris disposal. The NOAA announced this week that 5 states will each receive up to $50,000 in grants through its marine debris program to help them dispose of debris from the March 11th earthquake and tsunami. According to the website Glassdoor.com, that is substantially less than the agency pays its program analysts. Their average reported salary is over $100,000 a year. And physical scientists, their average salary is over $80,000 a year. The agency announced that Oregon, Alaska, Washington, California, and Hawaii will each receive up to $50,000 towards debris removal from its marine debris program. In Oregon, more than $50,000 has already been spent to dispose of a dock. Just that one dock. It was, 60 feet long?
Oh, the one up in Oregon?
Yeah. It already cost the state $50,000 to get rid of that, and they're seeking more federal aid, saying the dock alone will cost, nearly $100,000 to dispose of.
And with all that debris coming, oh my goodness.
Let's see, Senator Mark Begich from Alaska, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, quickly deemed the amount woefully inadequate. He said the tsunami created a slow-motion environmental disaster that will unfold over several years. This is not the last that we're going to hear of this story for sure. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to Nuked Radio. And we are back. I want to apologize for those of you who had a hard time finding us today. Orion's having some problems with its web pages. So thank you for those of you that are here. In Yahoo News today, Jules and I had a good laugh about this before the show. Iran nuclear energy facility hit with malware that plays AC/DC at full volume. Malware can be a major pain for anyone with a computer or mobile device, as it can lead to security risks like identity theft. But when a virus targets a nuke facility, the stakes are much higher. According to a report on security site F-Secure, Iran's nuclear energy group, called the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, or AEOI for short, is reaching out for help to rid its system of a malicious program that not only threatens the facility's daily operations, but also plays a 90s rock anthem on the infected computers. An email allegedly sent from an AEOI scientist detailed the attack, noting that the malware has shut down some of the facility's automated processes. The rather vague wording of the email leaves a few unanswered questions as to just what parts of the facility are in danger, but one piece of information was very clear. The insidious software prompted several of the group's computers to begin playing the song Thunderstruck by AC/DC in the middle of the night and at full volume. This isn't the first time Iran has come under fire from cyber criminals, and it likely won't be the last. But the attackers' decision to play classic rock songs on infected computers is perhaps the most unorthodox way of alerting a nuclear facility that it has fallen victim to hackers.
Yeah, American heavy metal. Yeah. By the way, I just want to mention, if anyone wants to go to chat, we do have chat up at fukushimafacts.com. You can go there, and the very last tab is Nuked Radio with Rad Chick, and we do have the chat room up there. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead.
Any News reported a few days ago, this was another facepalm story. Medicated worker intentionally lit fire that burned nuclear sub twice. Navy had blamed the blaze on a vacuum cleaner originally. This was actually published July 24th. He lit the fire so he could leave work early, causing $400 million in damage. Navy investigators have determined that a civilian laborer set the fire that caused $400 million in damage to a nuclear-powered sub because he had anxiety and wanted to get out of work early. Casey James Fury of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, faces up to life in prison if convicted of 2 counts of arson in the fire aboard the USS Miami attack submarine while it was in dry dock May 23rd, and a second blaze outside the sub on June 16th. The Navy originally said the fire started when an industrial vacuum cleaner sucked up a heat source that ignited debris inside. Fury told NCIS agent Jeremy Gauthier that he was taking 3 medications for anxiety, depression, and sleep, and a 4th for allergies. He checked himself into an inpatient mental health facility on June 21st and checked himself out 2 days later, the affidavit reads. Wow.
That's pretty nuts. I saw that story yesterday. I mean, I think he was having an argument in text with his girlfriend or something, is what it said.
But he did this like a couple weeks apart.
Yeah.
Doesn't the Navy like screen for these kinds of issues? I thought if you were on medication for anything like that, you can't join the Coast Guard or go into the military. Is that incorrect?
I don't know. I mean, you'd think so, especially if you were on like a nuclear sub or something. But hey.
You know, no matter how good these systems work, there's always the human element.
That's true.
What else is on Any News today? I'm probably not going to read too much from this because it's all kind of depressing. Unit 2 water is 10 times more radioactive than Unit 1. 47 million becquerels per liter in the turbine room basement. That was published today. And this is a great follow-up to our show we did on Tuesday. If you guys missed it, we had on Scott Owen, also known as Bug from Believers Underground, who explained a little bit more about what's going on at Reactor 2. Michio Kaku had said that the uranium in that reactor is liquefied, which means it would have to be over 5,000 degrees. And he explained how seawater and uranium love each other, and basically there's a sodium reactor, self-sustaining reaction that is going on underneath that reactor. So I wonder if that accounts for these large numbers, because it's only 4,300,000 becquerels per liter in the water inside Unit 1's turbine building basement.
Wow.
You know, they wanted to build a wall underground, and they said it was for Reactor 1. This came out a couple months ago, and they've never really said what that's for.
I thought,
or whether that's going to happen. I didn't see anything about it really after that.
I thought it was to stop some of the water from seeping into the ocean is kind of what they had talked about. And originally they had talked about tunneling underneath to stop the corium from getting to the water table, but then that was too expensive, so they scrapped that idea. And then I thought that wall around number 1 was to try to stop some of that water that was just like pouring right through the reactor into the ocean. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I have not read that they've done any of that.
Yeah, I guess the bedrock that it's built on isn't enough of a wall. But who knows how the earthquake compromised it. It would have probably been good to do this like 16 months ago, though. I mean, right now there's so much radioactivity underground, and if they have to go in there with any types of machinery, the machines already aren't working inside the reactor buildings, and we've got numbers like this underneath there. I mean, how are they going to possibly accomplish this? I don't know. Mutation alert. More images are being shared, some weird ones. There's a watermelon somebody sent me that when they cut it open, there was like 3 watermelons inside of it. Norfolk pines that are growing branches out like stars. And I sent this person a link right off the EPA's website showing plant images from Chernobyl, and there's one that looks exactly like the pine that he took a picture of. I'll post that in chat for you guys at break. So I wanted to remind you that we have a mutation watch page on Facebook, or you can go on the Fukushima Facts Tumblr. And I actually emailed Chris Busby a few days ago to let him know that these images are available and that he should feel free to use any of them, and how I'd love to have him on my show. And right before we went on air, I got an email back from him saying that he would. And so we're going to try to do a pre-recorded interview this weekend or within the next week. So I'm really, really, really excited about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't believe he's going to be on.
I know. GMO versus Rads. People are commenting under the watermelon picture. What is causing this? I mean, it's very, very unusual. I mean, we have loads of information regarding the plant, animal, and environmental changes that happened around the reactor in Chernobyl. Some of these images are textbook, like the pine tree and some of the witch's broom effect that we're seeing in plants. But the watermelon was a new one to me. So we'll post that up, and we'll ask Dr. Busby about it too when we do that interview. I mean, in my opinion, it's more likely the radiation, because so many of these factors are textbook from the Chernobyl research. And even TMI, they notice fasciation in dandelions and black-eyed Susans along the rivers around 3 Mile Island. So we'll just keep gathering info and sending it to the people who know more than we do, and share any information that we get back. You're listening to Nuked Radio. We'll be back in just a moment.
You should learn how to say no.
And welcome back. I've been getting a lot of email requests from people to do a show on Nibiru. And all I can really say about Nibiru is if it's coming, we're going to have 400 Fukushimas in the Northern Hemisphere instead of 1. So that's all I have to really say about that. I do remember hearing about it, about Planet X, back when I was in high school in the 80s, when they discovered it, and there wasn't a lot of news that came out afterward. You can find some of these articles online, and there's a lot of people on YouTube that are covering it. In fact, just in the last day or so, John Moore, who is a former Navy intelligence and has a radio show, did a Nibiru show yesterday with some of the intel that he's been getting about it. And if you want to know more about it, you should probably take a listen. But most of the preparedness things you should probably have for any kind of shit hit the fan situation. The other thing that is circulating a lot is this Olympic game Illuminati connection or possible connection, and whether or not the Colorado shootings were staged, some kind of stage ritual event. Something that was really, really weird is that a few days before that Colorado shooting, Lil Wayne, who I think everybody knows is like in the Illuminati and is like put out songs and videos about it before. This video that he put out with, I don't remember who's the guy with him in the video, but there's a scene at the end of the video where there's 12 skeletons sitting in a theater. And as he's singing, he keeps covering his ears like he's hearing gunshots. So I don't know what that's about. Check it out. It's on YouTube. There are also a large number of VIPs and athletes that have dropped out of the Olympics at the last minute, whether or not they are worried about something going on or this is just coincidental, I don't know. You can find videos on YouTube about that as well. I'm more concerned about what we already know about the Olympic site. I mean, this isn't a conspiracy. There's 7,000 tons of radioactive material buried underneath the site. This was posted in the Games Monitor. I think this was posted in 2010, too. There's a nice picture of a big orange tarp being laid over the site to cover 1 million square meters of contaminated ground. The Olympics is a great brand. So says David Higgins, chief executive of the Olympic Delivery Authority. One of the words Higgins would not like attached to his brand is rubbish, yet rubbish features large in relation to the London Olympics. The main stadium, basketball arena, velodrome, and the media center are all built on rubbish, or to be more exact, former rubbish dumps. Most of this rubbish, with associated contamination, remains under these venues. Documents submitted for planning approval reveal that the ground below the media center is still producing so much methane from the decaying refuse it contains that special precautions should have been taken to protect the expected 20,000 visiting journalists and media. There's some good pictures of this article, including a survey that Chinese delegates did with their Geiger counters. Some of their Geiger counters registered off scale when they toured the site before construction began. 2 documents, excerpt from one shown below, warned of buried radioactive waste near the site of the basketball arena and velodrome close to the athletes' village, yet the authorities ignored the possibility of widespread contamination until radioactivity was found in excavated material some months after works began. Then, at the site of the main stadium, significant quantities of radioactive contamination were unknowingly excavated and spread around to other areas of the site. Documents also acknowledge that further contamination remains buried beneath the stadium. In a bid to prevent a rubbishing of the Olympic brand, London 2012 bosses have been at pains to play down the issue of the radiation hazard and its poor management. For example, in February of 2008, when radioactive waste had been inadvertently excavated, a PR distraction strategy was hatched with all the parties involved, which included the claim highly sensitive monitoring has been carried out on the site during the earthworks program, and this has detected a small amount of low-level radiation finds in the soil in the area. This soil, with mild radioactive properties present due to the past industrial activity over the last 100 years or so, is being managed so it presents no risk to public or workers. What they ended up doing at the site is mixing in clean dirt with the contaminated dirt. There were 7,000 tons of radioactive waste that was dumped there over the last 60 years. It was a private landfill that apparently had no regulations in place. In fact, excavations at the main stadium site were virtually completed before any radiation monitoring or protective measures were introduced, despite its history as a high-risk, unregulated private landfill. When radiation was detected in November 2007, no action was taken and it was not made public. Only in February of 2008 were the relevant authorities alerted and remedial and protective measures started, which meant mixing in dirt and covering the whole thing with a big orange tarp.
That's smart.
Meanwhile, a delegation from Beijing visited the location where, far from mild radioactive property, detection equipment was registering off-the-scale readings. Since surveying first started, mysteriously high levels of background radiation had been consistently recorded. So I wonder how this is going to affect, number one, the athletes, all these people that worked on the site, too, and drive by it. It's like located at the intersection of a bunch of highways. And there's a picture during the construction of this like huge amount of dirt. It's like a mountain right next to the highway. All these people that were driving by it were getting exposed. The workers on the site were getting exposed. Now the people that are going there could potentially be exposed. If you are going, and I know we have some listeners in England, if you feel that you have to go, even in light of all this news going on about it, make sure you bring a Geiger counter or borrow one and take it along and shoot some video of your readings. The ODA claimed that the health and safety of the workforce and local people is our number one priority, yet the failure to carry out a detailed and comprehensive radiological investigation prior to starting earthworks would suggest otherwise. The main guy that was in charge of this site to quit in protest of the way this situation was handled. Olympic spin doctors are also keen to play down the fact that more than 7,000 tons of radioactively contaminated material has been reburied on the site. The potential for bad publicity makes the reburial of this material a surprising choice. Paul Sharman comments, taking this PR risk looks to have been unavoidable. The waste includes material that could not be disposed of to any landfill in the country and may well have been refused even at the Specialist Radioactive Waste Depository at Drigg. The conditions for acceptance at Drigg would have also meant external scrutiny, which would have been highly damaging. Reburying it on the site looks like a gamble that they had to take. You cannot find this story in any mainstream news source, but there's lots of them on alternative sites. One of the people on the Rads page who's very active, Christina Bruce, also wrote a wonderful article called Radiation and Rockets, Why I Will Boycott the London Olympics. And I'll drop a link for you guys. The Environment Agency prohibits this type of, there are a number of irregularities about the on-site burial of radioactive contamination. The authorities appear to have colluded to place the problem outside of regulatory control. They did this by claiming higher activity material was to be mixed with lower activity material. That's the solution is dilution, which Arnie Gunderson has talked about extensively with the burning of radioactive waste. That's what they do in Japan to get around some of these issues too. Mixing it with non-radioactive waste does not dilute the isotopes. They're still there. The Environment Agency prohibits this type of dilution for the purpose of avoiding regulation. Furthermore, documents show that when the burial actually took place, there was no physical mixing of the contaminants. Rather, they were simply placed one on top of the other in a hole in the ground. Surprisingly, this was approved by the Environment Agency, who subsequently claimed to have deleted the relevant records. There's lots of records with this article, including some maps of where the highest readings were found. Please share this with anyone that you know who might be attending the games. We'll be back in just a moment.
My lover stands on golden sands.
And welcome back. I want to read a little bit of this article written by Christina Bruce. She also wrote, Houston, we have a problem. No known technology to deal with Fukushima. This was back in May. But the article I'm going to read from is Radiation and Rockets, Why I'm Boycotting the London Olympics. I guess this was picked up by some famous blogger and posted on her site. And just yesterday alone, she got 5,000 reads on it. So spread this article around. Radiation rockets at the London Olympics, you ask? Yes. More than 7,000 tons of radioactive debris pushed just to the side to build the Olympic Stadium, and anti-aircraft missiles anchored on the rooftops of private London residences. War games, military, and private security forces patting down the throngs at a cost of £1 billion or $1.54 billion just for security alone. This is the straw which has finally broken the camel's back for my lifetime of Olympics watching. I've loved the Olympics since the first of my lifetime in 1968. I was just 2 months past my third birthday when the Mexico City Games glowed most nights, and of course the weekends on the black and white TV set in our modest living room. I would roll around on the floor on the scratchy, uncomfortable gray carpeting, watching every second, while my father, who despised all that is sports, complained because shows like the Wild Wild West and Hawaii Five-0 were preempted by the Olympic spectacle. Not only did I watch at home, but I watched at both sets at my grandparents' houses. The games were ubiquitous on American TVs for 15 days that fall. I know it's difficult to fathom a 3-year-old remembering much of anything, but I remember many events from those games, nor was there controversial moments lost upon me. The shining moments which stand out for me were the gold medals of track athlete Kip Keino of Kenya, Bob Beeman's leap of the century long jump, a record which would stand for 23 years, And of course, who alive could forget the introduction of Dick Fosbury's unorthodox jumping style known as the Fosbury flop, revolutionizing the sport of the high jump. For me, though, it was not just about the competition. Even at that age, I understood the games represented a coming together of mankind. It was a stark contrast to the images of the Vietnam War, the police actions against youth war and civil rights protests in America on the news nightly, which I had already been exposed to. To that 3-year-old, those games were a vision of what could be and what should be, people coming together for a common interest from all cultures, languages, and races in peace and cooperation. Yes, I was already acutely aware things in the world were horribly out of kilter. Children absorb far more than most imagine, even at that age. However, even in the midst of the hopefulness which the games already represented to me, I was jolted in the second week by the reaction of adults around me to the awards ceremony for the 200-meter race, where gold medalist Tommy Smith and bronze medalist John Carlos displayed what was dubbed the Black Power salute on the podium. The serenity of those games was somehow forever marred as many Americans reviled the athletes' use of the award stand to make a political statement. It created such public furor that both runners were expelled from the U.S. Olympic team. It was all quite confusing for a very small child at the time, but that continued to reinforce within me that things in the grown-up world were not as they should be. Regardless, I would go on later to love that year's Grenoble Winter Games, watching Frenchman Jean-Claude Killy win 3 downhill medals and American figure skater Peggy Fleming win her gold. My love of the games has waned dramatically over the years due to the shift from amateur athletes to almost 100% professionals who, if not actually employed as pros full-time, are so heavily sponsored and subsidized that you'd be struck down by God for even suggesting they remotely resemble any sort of amateur competitor of 40 years ago. That the constant use of performance-enhancing drugs and the over-commercialization of the games has all left a very bad taste in my mouth. It no longer is what it was, or what in theory it was supposed to be. The games have now morphed into such a grotesque representation of everything which plagues our modern society that I can no longer condone my even watching any portion of it. There comes a time when you must draw a line in the sand and say no more to things which you do not believe in, nor can morally or ethically support. This feeling culminated a couple of months ago when I learned that rocket launchers would be installed at different locations throughout London for security purposes during the games. These are meant to thwart any aerial attack which might be attempted on the Olympic venue. The escalating militarization of police all over the world over the last decade is frightening enough, but when things have gone so far as to put rocket launchers on top of buildings for events such as the Olympics, which are supposed to represent peaceful cultural exchange, things have just gone too far. I won't go to sports events in America where fans are patted down from ankle to shoulder as they are now for NFL football games. I honestly cannot watch games where residential buildings have been commandeered by the UK government without the consent of owners to host military artillery for a sporting event. The defense of London is costing over $1.54 billion. Stunningly insane. We have millions of people unemployed, homeless, and starving both in Europe and the U.S. since the economic collapse. Not that I am ignorant of the worst plight by the third world by any stretch of the imagination, yet they are spending over $1.5 billion on security for a sport which most likely will be the Olympics over the past couple of decades, to a huge net loss business proposition. The world truly has gone mad. War games are coming to London this week as the military wheels out RAF Typhoon jets, helicopters, and land and sea forces to test the capital's £1 billion defenses against terrorist attacks during the Olympics. The Olympic War Games, almost definitely the biggest peacetime military exercise ever undertaken in London, are scheduled to take place over the bank holiday weekend between Wednesday the 2nd and Thursday the 10th of May. The official start of the games is tomorrow. Not that I'm actually a fan or much of a believer in online polls, but one sponsored by the Guardian newspaper in England posed the question whether people would feel safer with rockets on top of their buildings for the games, and a shocking 57.2% of respondents voted yes. At least 42.8% realized that having hardware like that on your house might actually prompt someone, if nutty enough, to try to make a political statement out of the games that would now make your own house out as an alternative target, even the whole notion of it is pretty ridiculous. As the deadline for the games approach, although some Londoners have begun to stand up and against their city and their homes being turned into police state for the sporting event, on July 27, much of the pre-event chatter among Londoners revolves not around the competition themselves, but the controversial measures being implemented to safeguard against terrorist activity. Residents of the Fred Wigg Tower in Leytonstone, less than a mile from where soccer icon David Beckham grew up, were seeking an injunction against the missile placement they claim increases their own danger of being under attack. The High Court dismissed the claims. However, on Tuesday, July 10th, the High Court ruled in favor of the Ministry of Defense, agreeing that a tower block was a suitable site for missiles. Jules, would you want a missile on the top of your house?
Absolutely not. They should be compensating those people.
I wonder if there's depleted uranium in those missiles, too.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know.
It's so crazy. This whole situation is so crazy.
And they're setting it up so bad that, if nothing happens, I will be very, very surprised. Pleasantly surprised, but surprised nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through. She's got a bunch of articles attached to this, too. Share this around on social media. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the missiles. I didn't know there was a court injunction to try to stop it. I'm glad somebody took that incentive. The missiles also have been left unguarded outside East London flats. I mean, if they're going to put a missile launcher on your house, shouldn't a soldier or someone be in charge of it or guarding it or something? I mean, it's crazy.
You'd think.
After that, it all makes about as much sense as body scanning and patting down airline passengers for weapons, but letting them board with belts, bootlaces, and 5-pound aluminum-clad laptops, all of which could be used to both incapacitate and secure hostages. It's not about safety, it's about control and feeding the military-industrial complex of the entire world more money. War and control are big, big business with lots of fringe benefits for the people, for the corporations, governments, and especially the banks, which run it. As all of this were not enough to make you not want to participate in this year's Olympics, we also have the little-known issue of over 7,000 tons of radioactive waste that was discovered under the site of the stadium. The mix, which includes radium, polonium, thorium, and uranium, could not possibly have been naturally occurring, but the Olympic authorities tried their best to make it out to be just that. That's a tough sell when the stadium is built on the site of a former dump. The next disgusting part of this being a cover-up is the developers and the Olympic Committee tried to hide it from the authorities after it was discovered. Proper authorities were not advised nor consulted before removal had already been undertaken. By moving, we mean 400 meters from the stadium, where it supposedly will be safe for the next 1,000 years. Please share this article around. I'll put it in chat. Thanks for finding us today, guys, and have a good weekend. Stay safe.